Welcome to No Pun Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. It is the continuation of our Look Inside series. This summer, we are breaking down all 32 teams in their own specific episodes. We're looking at the fantasy football sleepers, the bust. We're just basically telling you guys how we feel about these teams, how we feel about these offenses heading into the season. Draft season is just around the corner. Today, it is the Seattle Seahawks. We are a little past halfway done with these. Seattle has made some peculiar moves this offseason, and we're going to see if we can make fantasy football sense of them. Let's get into it. Welcome into No Pun Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I am your host, Ryan Weisse. As Joe Zolo still taking a little bit of time off, we are still plugging through the Look Inside series. With me, as always, Joshua Hudson. Josh, you ready to talk some Seahawks, buddy?
Yeah, and my confused hat is just hovering over me right now because I have no idea why the moves that the Seahawks made were the moves the Seahawks made.
Yeah, I was going to say, it definitely seems to be kind of almost the consensus with the Seahawks because almost every layer, they didn't do exactly what anybody thought they were going to do. So we'll get to that in a second. Last year, they did go 10-7. They brought their coach back, which you would expect from a 10-7 team. But what they didn't do, Josh, was bring their offensive coordinator back. They immediately was it Ryan Grubb?
Ryan Grubb, yep.
Ryan Grubb brought in Clint Kubiak to be the offensive coordinator. So it will be, I was going to say it's largely the same team, but that's not true either. This is a very different Seattle team as we head in. And before we get into that, I want to let you guys know if you're looking to support the show, if you're looking to make a little bit of money, maybe doing some prop bets on the Seattle Seahawks, you guys can sign up for Underdog. If you've never used the site, use promo code WOFF, WOFF. That's Women of Fantasy Football. That is our sister site. And the money that we make from this promo code goes directly towards the partnership we have with Laura Oakman's Galvanize. But we also use these funds to send women to the Super Bowl, to send women to the draft combine, to send women to the NFL draft, things we have done in each of the last 3 years and things we want to keep going. So if you guys are looking to get on Underdog and make a little money for the first time, help us make a little money to keep supporting the women of fantasy football. Josh, when you look at this offense, as we mentioned before, it's different, but they kept the same head coach. Let's just get into it. The QB1 is Sam Darnold. He is going off the board as the QB 27. I think this might be the first episode where the QB2 is so close to the QB1, Josh. Jalen Milroe is the QB 35 in Underdog Best Ball drafts right now. We use Underdog ADP. That is the ADP as of literally about an hour ago. I just pulled it for this episode.
Colts QBs were pretty tight.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay. Oh, I missed that episode. I was like, I don't remember that, but that explains it. Okay. RB1 for the team is Kenneth Walker. He's going off the board as the RB18. Zach Charbonnet is going off the board as the RB37. They do have two more running backs. Kenny McIntosh is technically third on the depth chart because he was already with the team. He's going off as the RB108. Damian Martinez is the rookie out of Miami. He's going off as the RB93. At wide receiver, we got Jackson Smith-Njigba, who enjoyed a little bit of a breakout last year. He is the wide receiver 19 off the board. Cooper Kupp comes over from division rival Los Angeles Rams. He is the wide receiver 50 in best ball drafts right now. And then the wide receiver 3 is Marquez Valdez-Scantling, going off as the wide receiver 99. And Josh, you may remember better than me. Is this the first time where the tight end 2 is being drafted higher than the tight end 1? Noah Fant is the tight end 43, but rookie out of Miami, Elijah Arroyo, is the tight end 34.
I mean, really, it just means that neither of them are being drafted in best ball drafts.
That's also very well. 34. It gets interesting at 34, but you're absolutely right.
It's the rookie fever. I mean, everybody's been waiting for Noah Fant to quote break out, and quite honestly, like this Kubiak system, it's not the most attractive for tight ends.
Yeah. Before we get into our thoughts on this team, I'd like to remind you all that we are slowly but steadily climbing towards, we're hoping to get past 1,400 followers. We're climbing towards 1,500 followers. And if you are just tuning into Club Fantasy for the first time, hit that like, hit that subscribe, do all the things that all the great YouTubers ask you to do to help us continue to grow. We'd very much appreciate it. Josh, when you look at the Seattle offense, you've mentioned confused. I have a feeling that's the route you're going to be going. What are your thoughts?
Hella confused. Clint Kubiak, when you look at how he runs his offenses, he's a disciple of his father, Gary Kubiak, who's a disciple of Mike Shanahan, who's the father of Kyle Shanahan, who basically has bred every offensive coordinator in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
Kubiak's going to run the hell out of the football, plain and simple. I mean, we've seen a lot of really good running back performances in these, Kubiak Shanahan type systems. The two direct running backs that played while Kubiak was calling plays, 2021 Dalvin Cook had a monster season for the Vikings. And then, of course, last year with Alvin Kamara, we know he missed a little bit of time, but in points per game, he did finish as the RB6. He was the pass game coordinator in San Francisco in 2023 while Kyle Shanahan was calling plays. We know how well Christian McCaffrey played in that offense. So I'm fully expecting a monster breakout season for Kenneth Walker, which, you know what? It's a contract year for him, too. Let's not forget that. And seeing as how last year was the year of the running back, I know Kenneth Walker's hoping that health plays a role, he stays healthy and can cash in, because this is definitely the kind of offense where he will have the ability to do that. But what I find really interesting when you look at how Kubiak calls plays, last year alone, they ran the second lowest rate of 11 personnel in the NFL.
Interesting.
3 wide receiver sets. Okay. There was the only wide receiver that even saw above a 40% rate while running out of the slot had less than 30 targets. So they are expecting their wide receivers to run out wide. And I'll get to why this is so damn confusing bringing him into this offense here in a little bit when we talk about the wide receivers here. Tight end's not going to be a huge part of this offense. Juwan Johnson last year, 64 targets, did run 42.3% of his routes from the slot. But they're going to run a lot of either 2 wide receiver sets or 2 tight end sets, whether that's 21 personnel or 12 personnel. They ran the 7th highest rate of 12 personnel just last year. But I mean, even if you go back to 2021 with Minnesota, like we know that Justin Jefferson had 1,600 yards. Adam Thielen had 10 touchdowns as well. They performed. KJ Osborne was the 3rd wide receiver. They ran the 5th fewest 11 personnel in the league. KJ Osborne still managed 74 targets. But again, that was with Kirk Cousins and throwing the football a ton. Sam Darnold is not Kirk Cousins. Let's kind of pump the brake. There's a reason why Sam Darnold is going as QB 27 after having a top 10 season last year. So when I look at what Kubiak typically does, and then you go out and you get Cooper Kupp and pair him with Jackson Smith-Njigba, these are guys that JSN runs over 80% of his routes from the slot. Cooper Kupp is typically around that 40% mark out of the slot, typically even higher than that of late. So it just none of this makes any sense. So the only thing that I'm going to lean on, Kenneth Walker is going to ball out. That's the only thing that makes any sense to me when I look at how this offense could play out.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go with it. Is you and I picked different aspects of the passing game to talk about for the players we're going to focus on for this article.
We've talked enough about Kenneth Walker.
I was going to say, so just briefly in this part, I was going to talk about Kenneth Walker. In our episode a few nights ago, Josh, all we really did was talk about Kenneth Walker. And the chat started making the Arian Foster comps just because of the Kubiak name and everything. And there's a lot of interest to this
man.
Yeah, there's a lot of interest to this running game. Kenneth Walker going off as the RB18, probably one of the better values in fantasy football right now. Zach Charbonnet going off as the 37 might be an insane value depending on how this season shakes out. So we definitely like those running backs, even though we're not going to spend a lot of time on them. But Josh, you've kind of hit the nail on the head, and I'm actually just going to jump in now because the player I wanted to talk about was Sam Darnold. And I fully came into this expecting to go negative. And I agree with you. He is Sam Darnold, but the QB 28, who was the QB 9 last season, Josh, it feels like a trap.
You think? You really think he's going to throw for 30 touchdowns again?
I just want to remind everybody who's listening in right now what Sam Darnold did last season. 66% completion rate to this point in his career. 62 had been the best he had ever done. 4,319 yards to that point in his career. 30-24 was the best he had ever done. 35 touchdowns. Josh, if you take Sam Darnold's best 2 seasons and combine them, It's 36 touchdowns, and it's his first 2 seasons in the league. Now, one thing I will say is he also, I remember, what was it, 2021, where Sam Darnold started showing some real sneaky rushing upside. He kept scoring all those rushing touchdowns. He didn't find the touchdowns last year, Josh, but he also ran the ball 67 times for 212 yards. That's a terrible yards per carry. I don't think we're going to see that aspect of his game move over into Seattle with him. They're just too damn good at running back for Sam Darnold to run the ball 67 times. But those passing numbers, Josh, there's no way to slice it, are very, very impressive passing numbers. Now, I also remember towards the end of the season, we've joked, he turned back into a pumpkin. 41 passes in the playoff game, or the week 18 game, rather, against Detroit. Only completed 18 of those passes. Started to throw a couple more interceptions towards the end of the year. In fact, weeks 9 and 10 combined for 5 interceptions. We saw glimpses of both the old Sam Darnold, Josh, and a new Sam Darnold last season. It seems like the entire world, and I'm with you, the entire world is betting on it being the old Sam Darnold, because when I statted him out, Josh, he statted out as the QB 26. So I can't make a case that Sam Darnold is a value, but my goodness, the whole world has decided he's not, and that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, he started out as my QB 28. So, I mean, he's definitely in that bottom tier. You know, he's a QB 3 in Superflex. He's not touchable in, you know, your 10, 12, even 14 team drafts. So, I mean, really, it's the Kevin O'Connell effect, right? Like, he wasn't good till he showed up in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell comes in and turns him into a freaking all-pro or Pro Bowler. And so now it's like, yeah, he gets a 3-year deal, $100 million contract. But Seattle knew what they were doing. They only guaranteed him basically 1 year's salary, right? So, like, again, if that doesn't tell you that the team is nervous about him, I don't know what does. I mean, you know, a couple of years ago, Baker Mayfield signed a very similar situation, you know, with Tampa coming in after one good year in Tampa, and, you know, has steadily gotten better. So that has definitely worked out. But I've never been impressed with Sam Darnold's game. I love Baker Mayfield coming out. Like, he was the guy that I wanted 101. He was the guy that I felt Cleveland should have taken. When Sam Darnold came out, I said, he looks like a typical USC quarterback.
Yeah.
A guy that looks better in college that's just going to flame out as a pro. But I have one golden rule when it comes to quarterbacks coming out. If you are a redshirt sophomore, you do not belong in the NFL.
Nope.
You have not started enough games in college.
No reason.
And that was Sam Darnold. And look what happened. He really has not looked good. It took him, what was last year, his 6th season?
Oh, I think you're way
if I'm not mistaken.
I have it in front of me. No, last year was season 7.
Season 7.
Going into 8th
7th year breakout. We're on the Alex Smith trajectory here. And again, like, Alex Smith was nothing special. He was good when he landed with Andy Reid. But are we sure that Clint Kubiak is that, right? Like, his dad made Matt Schaub a thing in Houston, but I'm not certain that Sam Darnold is even as good as Matt Schaub. So I'm not really feeling this, like, yeah, he's going to come in and he's going to light up Seattle. He's going to keep them competitive while Mike McDonald focuses on the defense and all these other things. Like, this offense confuses me with how the personnel lines up with what Kubiak wants to do. How does Sam Darnold even fit into that? Right? Like, I think there's going to be some similar terminology between what KOC ran in Minnesota and what Kubiak's going to run. Like, both of them spent time in, you know, that McVay-Shanahan tree. So I'm sure there's going to be some overlap there, but there's still going to be some nuances that Sam Darnold has to, quote, relearn, right? Or learn for the first time or whatever it is. And, you know, everybody's talking about Jalen Milroe. Everybody is like, oh, if Sam Darnold struggles, like, Milroe's going to be there. Like, this guy couldn't handle the pressure from New York. You think a rookie breathing down his neck is going to help him any? No.
Yeah, what an interesting comp to Baker Mayfield, especially since they both, I think they were in Carolina together.
They both
at one point.
In Carolina, yeah, and they were in the same draft class too.
Yeah, I was going to say from the same draft class. And if I remember correctly, when Darnold first came into the league, he was one of those stories where the Jets kept changing offensive coordinators. So, like, this guy has been through so many offenses in his career. Like, the inconsistencies.
You know what? That was Jalen Hurts, and he's done okay. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean,
that's just like, I feel
helps
like
when you're
people
Jalen
use
Hurts.
that as an excuse. Like, if you're a football player, you know how to play football.
I mean, yes and no. Jalen Hurts has been through some offenses, but he's also had an offensive-minded head coach pretty much his whole career, right? So, like, it's apples to apples. I don't even know what I'm trying to say here, Josh. Jalen Hurts is better than Sam Darnold, and I don't think we can make the argument.
We know this. But that's the point I'm getting at. It's like people use he's changed coordinators every year of his career, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I get that, sure. It makes sense, but it happens to a lot of people.
Well, I was going to say, I'm a stupid ass because the comparison made itself. So is Baker Mayfield, and it seems to have worked out pretty well for him the last few years. So I don't know. I wasn't even going to use it as an excuse for Darnold. I was just really getting over just the roller coaster and train wreck that this kid's career has been. And I don't know that this Seattle offense is the offense where he's going to go in there and fix it. It's funny for a guy, and I understand the home field advantage is going to play in his favor, but for a guy who's saw ghosts in New York, playing in front of the 12s there in Seattle could be an interesting transition as well.
Yeah, and let's also not forget too, like, I mean, big breakout last year, he had Justin Jefferson to throw to. There's nobody on this Seattle team that is Justin Jefferson.
And I think that slides us into your Cooper Kupp and your question of fit. So we'll move on to that now, because Sam Darnold also is the kind of guy who throws really well to big X wide receivers. He has the arm strength, and that's kind of what his game is. You wouldn't define him as a guy with touch. And now you got a team that's all slot wide receivers and tight ends, Josh. And you want to talk about the aged Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching towards the end of last year, like, Cooper Kupp looked straight up dusted.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's no way the Rams are going to bring him back. 31 years old. He just turned 32. Like, this is clearly the time when, wide receivers fall off, right? Seattle jettisons Tyler Lockett, who ends up in Tennessee, where wide receivers go to die. He was an older wide receiver. Now Cooper Kupp comes in, also an older wide receiver. But this is kind of a homecoming for Cooper Kupp, right? Like, he played in upstate Washington. So there's that bit of like hometown kind of flavor. But when I look at like play styles, when I look at how Cooper Kupp can fit in this offense versus Jackson Smith-Njigba, who for the vast majority of his career, JSN has ran out of the slot 69% of the time his rookie year and 83.6% of the time last year. Cooper Kupp is a lot lower than that. The last 3 seasons just in LA, he's run 43.3%, 40%, and 33.3% out wide. So he's doing that a lot more than what JSN is. JSN was basically a slot receiver in college too.
Yeah.
So he hasn't transitioned to actually being an out wide receiver in the pros. So either he can't beat man coverage to learn how to play on the outside, or he just isn't good out wide. Plain and simple. Like, to me, there is no in between. So Cooper Kupp has proven that he can beat you wherever, right? I understand he's 32 years old. But when you look at, I'll just take last year. Jackson Smith-Njigba had over 1,100 yards. How many 100-yard games do you think he had?
I would guess 4.
He had 3. Cooper Kupp had just over 700 yards, and I think he only played 11 games. How many 100-yard games did he have?
I'm going to guess 3.
3. Exactly. So, like, you're telling me that a 32-year-old wide receiver is basically doing exactly what a 23-year-old wide receiver is doing.
Yeah.
Mind you, yards per route run last year, JSN, 1.81. Cooper Kupp, 1.99. Receptions per game, Cooper Kupp, 5.6. JSN, 5.9. Wow. Cooper Kupp is basically doing what JSN is doing, and he knows how to run out wide.
I was going to say he's 10 years older. And
so when you have an offensive coordinator that's coming in and basically saying, I need my guys to run out wide because I don't have a slot receiver in this offense. So JSN either needs to learn how to play like Chris Olave and Justin Jefferson, or he's not going to see the field.
Yeah.
And Cooper Kupp, for as long as he's healthy, he's going to be that guy. They brought in Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and say what you want about him. He's the, journeyman wide receiver. He played really well in this offense. That's why Kubiak and the Seattle front office brought MVS to Seattle.
Yeah.
So there's your 2 wide receivers on the outside. Then you have your 2 tight end sets with Fant and Arroyo. When does JSN even see the field?
You've brought this point up a lot, and I've never really pushed back against it, but I don't see a scenario where.
No, and I get that. Like, I'm fully aware that JSN is going to play.
Yeah.
My point is, are we sure he's going to be effective playing in this role? Because he literally has not shown us that he can do it. And the prices that you're paying at, you're overpaying for what if. When I can take the injury discount. Yes, he's an older wide receiver, but I can take the injury discount on the guy that has shown that he can do it. And when a quarterback who we know sees ghosts needs a reliable target, who's he going to go to?
It's likely to go to Cooper Kupp.
Exactly. Right. So this is kind of my whole point. It's not so much that I think that Cooper Kupp is going to have some banner season at 32 years old. But to me, he is, outside of Kenneth Walker, because I've talked ad nauseum about him and how much value I think he is. When you look at the passing game, Cooper Kupp is much more of a value on this Seattle team than JSN, who's currently going at wide receiver 19. But I do want to give a big congratulations to the fantasy community, because that wide receiver 19 number used to be wide receiver 13. So thank you for, getting shit together and realizing that maybe JSN isn't the guy that you want him to be.
Yeah. So like all the reports have been that JSN's playing everywhere. And normally you want to hear that. But as Josh has pointed out, JSN is a guy who just excels in the slot and doesn't on the outside. So this is, Josh, you use this analogy all the time. It's the square peg round hole. And this may be a situation where this offense and this quarterback, no matter how talented JSN is, it may just not work out. And I think you're right there. And as I think back to like some of my best ball drafts, I may not have a single share of JSN on all of my teams because the ADP just has not lined up with where I'm willing to make an investment there.
And that's how I know you're drafting right.
Yeah. Hey, there you go. And I know I have at least 2 shares of Cooper Kupp because he falls to the right spot in the draft. So I was looking back and I didn't plan on defending Cooper Kupp this episode, and I hardly have to. The stories of his demise might be greatly exaggerated here. But so the last 3 weeks were awful. 9 total targets, only caught 4 balls, barely crossed 50 yards total. He had that 0-for-3 game against San Francisco. But the game right before that, 5 catches for 92 yards and a touchdown. Shitty game before that, but the game right before that, 8 catches, 60 yards and a touchdown. And the game before that, 6 catches, 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I'm not even done, but I'm not going to read his entire thing. But those games that I all just mentioned were week 11 and after, Josh. So like we have it in our heads that Cooper Kupp is dust. He might not be as dust as we thought. And now you've kind of pointed out he's the better asset possibly in this specific offensive scheme.
Yeah. I mean, he's more versatile in in the type of routes that he can run. I mean, again,
did the Rams make the playoffs last year? They did, right?
Yeah, they did. They almost beat Philly.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing. Like, Saquon ran all over him, yet the Rams were, a Jalen Carter sack away from, potentially beating the Eagles.
So that explains a little bit more of the Cooper Kupp dust. Wild card round, 1 catch for 29 yards. Divisional round, 5 catches against your Philadelphia Eagles for 61 yards. So that explains a little bit. We're now talking about 5 pretty mediocre games in a row instead of 3 pretty mediocre. So I'll own that a little bit, but I'm still on board with you. I think there's more value there than we're certainly pretending that there is.
Well, and I mean, feel free. Let's play the would you rather. Like, pull up the guys that are going around him.
Yeah.
That, I mean, you look at, when you're looking at wide receiver 50, like this is basically your 5th, maybe even 6th wide receiver. Like you're looking for, maybe some level of consistency, some upside. We've seen Cooper Kupp be the literal overall wide receiver 1. And I'm not saying that at 32 years old, he's probably ever going to be that again. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that in the right pass happy offense where health lines up, he can have a 1,200 yard season.
Now, what's interesting, Josh, is I'm just going to go up. We don't need to talk about down. But we'll play the game the way Joe likes to play it sometimes. Is just tell me when you would take a guy over Kupp. But when I see these first 5 names, It's interesting. So Darnell Mooney.
I would take Mooney.
I would as well. Josh Downs. I would take Kupp.
I would take Kupp, yeah.
Jaden Reed. I would take Reed. I'm a big Reed guy.
Yeah, I would take Reed.
Stephon Diggs.
I would take Diggs.
See, I don't know who I would take there, but I'd probably take Diggs. Matthew Golden. I think we'd both go Kupp.
Yeah, there's definitely some intrigue with Golden, but I think that Reed is the better of those two wide receivers, so I'd rather have Reed over Golden, so I'm fine taking
no. Oh, I see. I'm like, we're comparing the wrong guys here. Khalil Shakir, Josh.
I would take Shakir, but I do think that Kupp probably has better touchdown upside than Shakir.
So all I'm going to say, I'm not going to do any more names because we're already up to wide receiver 40. And again, it feels like even though we both love Kupp, he's also priced kind of appropriately. Like it's
and that's the thing is like I don't think he's completely mispriced. Like I get it, you're baking in the age, you're baking in the injury risk because he hasn't finished the last 3 years, but knowing what his history is and what he's done and receiving yards per game, catches per game, all of these things, like a healthy Cooper Kupp, how's that any different than Adam Thielen going to Carolina and having 1,000-yard season at 31 or 32
100%.
years old? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. And Carolina was investing in wide receivers when that was happening as well, like the Seahawks have in JSN. So yeah, there's a non-zero chance that Cooper Kupp leads the Seahawks in receiving this year, and we would not be surprised. I do want to point out there will be an article about the Seattle Seahawks on our website written by Josh Hudson. He has not decided on a player yet. It's JSN. It's JSN. There you go. So you've got a preview. If you'd like to hear Josh's full thoughts or read Josh's full thoughts, go check out clubfantasyffl.com and you'll see articles that we've written about every team that we've covered so far, including Josh's newest article on Jackson Smith-Njigba. Josh, as we get into the training camp battle, I agreed with this as soon as I saw it. And obviously I pointed it out when we were talking about ADP. Really, the only battle to watch is the tight end one, Noah Fant versus Elijah Arroyo. They gave Fant, I believe, just a 1-year deal. He's not back on anything big. Arroyo, they drafted in the 4th round. I don't know. I'm just kind of making up numbers at this point, just trying to go by my memory. But I think the real question, Josh, is does it matter who wins?
It may not, but I do think that there's a case for one of these guys to potentially see close to 70 targets.
Okay.
I do think Fant's going to start as the starter. I think that he has the ability to play in line. He's much more developed as a blocker at the longer that he's been in the league. He's always been known more so for his pass catching prowess, but every team that he's been on, even the one that traded up to draft him, really hasn't utilized him much in the passing game. So feels like a wasted draft pick and wasted money, to be quite honest with you. But this is the last year of Fant's deal, so drafting Elijah Arroyo makes a lot of sense. Arroyo was kind of a late breakout in college at the University of Miami. But the one thing that I always found interesting with how they spoke about Arroyo is that he, is this big target, has good speed. And, they talk about him, playing an X, right, in the offense, which that was the whole thing with Kyle Pitts. And like what made him such a unicorn was that he could be, an X wide receiver, a wide receiver one from the tight end position. And we've kind of seen how that's played out. Elijah Arroyo runs like a 4.7 40. That's not X wide receiver material.
No, it's not.
Let's put that on the back burner. But again, when I talk about how Kubiak kind of utilizes the tight end, Juwan Johnson last year running about 40% out of the slot, that could very easily be Arroyo. And then Fant maybe plays that Foster Moreau role where he's lined up more in line, blocking, running the routes that way with the 2 wide receivers out or the 2 running backs, however he wants to play it. So I think they're basically splitting this, tight end pie, so to speak.
Well, I was going to say, and then JSN plays the Taysom Hill role, Josh.
There you go. There you go. Except JSN doesn't have the nose for the end zone that Taysom Hill
exactly.
Has. But yeah, no, I just it's going to be really confusing. It's not one that I'm like overly excited to spend some draft capital on. But again, we've talked about, Kupp's injury history. We've talked about Kenneth Walker's injury history. Marcos Valdes-Scantling can't catch a cold half the time.
Yeah, could open some things up.
It could very well open up opportunity for the tight end position to make an impact. And, maybe that's Arroyo, maybe it's Fant. I would personally lean Fant, which clearly the ADP doesn't believe in me. or
Yeah.
believe me. But again, the ADP is not betting on either of these guys anyway. So,
well, and as you've pointed out in every episode, or we've pointed out in every episode, it's also rookie fever. Everybody prefers the rookie this time of year. So,
yeah. 100%.
Yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts as well. I don't have either one of these guys. I think even over 40 targets, Josh. I have them splitting, but I agree with you. I should probably go in and move that needle towards Fant just a little bit. And Fant kind of lines up well as a Jawan Johnson type tight end as well. So I think you're absolutely right there.
I do have Fant at 69 targets.
Where do I have him? Let me make sure I'm not missing.
But I only gave Arroyo 31, and a lot of that is just because I think that there's a lot of room for him to grow.
I have Fant at 58, and I have Arroyo at 39. So again, okay. I what's funny is ADP wise, I have them at 28 and 35. So like right where they're being drafted.
I have 20 and 41.
Yeah, exactly. As we wrap this episode up, we like to talk about our best bets for your sports book of choice. Me and Josh had to pick some, so we're going to tell you the specific sports book. But as I mentioned earlier in the show, you could use that promo code over an Underdog. You'll probably find at least one of these over on Underdog. What's that, Josh?
Similar lines, at least.
Yeah, exactly. And so, Josh, we're both going Kenneth Walker. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about him on the show, but we both clearly think he's an upside play this year. You're betting on 1,000 rushing yards.
Yeah, when I look at every other bet that's on there, everything was minus money, and it's just like, doesn't really feel intriguing in any way, shape, or form. This is the only one that I felt could conceivably hit that gave me plus money.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think Kenneth Walker is going to absolutely eat this year. So 1,000 yards feels pretty easy, and you get plus money even at plus 175, which obviously isn't much, but it's still plus. I'm willing to take that bet.
Yeah, and obviously I like him as well. Mine feels like stealing money. I have to score 6.5 or higher rushing touchdowns. So to score more than 6 rushing touchdowns, it's only negative 117. But Josh, I went back and looked at Kenneth Walker.
Last year was 7 every year.
Yeah, last year was a bad year, 7. He has went down. So apparently they're playing the numerology game that we want to play with Kyle Pitts because he was 9.87. So the bookies are saying he's hitting 6 this year. But to me, on an offense that is completely focused on running the football, I think we could see one of the better. I wouldn't be surprised with double-digit touchdowns out of Kenneth Walker. And
yeah, it would not surprise me. Would not surprise me one bit. I do have him at 8 rushing touchdowns.
I do as well.
2 receiving touchdowns. He stats out as my RB14 in fantasy.
He is my 18, and it's weird, Josh, as we've been doing these shows, there's players who I feel are values. And then when I look at my rankings, they don't shake out as a value, but it's like, I still want to draft them on as many teams as I can get my hands on them because I'm hoping I've under projected. I would much rather be wrong on my projections and right about the player.
Yeah. And that's 100% fair. I mean, I gave Walker, 50.6% of the rush share, and I gave Charbonnet 20.9. I mean, the way that I've been talking about him, you would think that I gave Walker like 80% of the rush share. But I mean, look, for as much as I want to believe that he's going to have a great season, I do think he's going to. Fact of the matter is he can't stay healthy. He hasn't stayed healthy. So it would be really irresponsible of me to be like, yeah, he's going to have a 65% rush share. He's going to absolutely dominate. You're going to get a top 5 running back here. When I do my projections, I'm looking at how does all of this shake out? What are the possibilities, the probabilities, etc. But that ceiling that I'm discussing, that is 1,000% in play. And that's why I think that he's the value that he is.
There you go, guys. That's going to wrap up the talk of the Seattle Seahawks. Hopefully we didn't confuse you any more than we are already confused. We're hoping, no matter what Josh says, we're hoping for good Sam Darnold. We're just not expecting good Sam Darnold, and the entire Seattle season is probably going to come down to that. Next week's episode's a guy who got brought up a lot in this episode. We're going to be talking Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as the Look Inside series continues. We're obviously getting into the playoff teams now. Everything's going to get a lot more interesting. Guess what? It's another new offense for Baker Mayfield.
I mean, it's Tampa Bay new, but it is probably not really new.
Yeah. So can he keep the streak of outperforming expectations alive? We are going to find out. Remember, we have our live show every single Wednesday. Right now, we are breaking down ADP values. We have these episodes coming out 3 times per week, and there's always an accompanying article coming out with these episodes. And we have mock draft shows It's twice a week right now, Thursdays and Fridays, where we have these episodes out there for you to help you guys, learn what we're doing. We're doing a lot of charity mock drafts right now. I'm actually going to be jumping off here to record a Scott Fishbowl episode as we speak. So there's a ton of stuff. There's no reason for you not to subscribe to Club Fantasy here on the YouTube. Go to the website. I actually just recently added a subscribe button on the website because Gator J is a genius, and somehow that had went away at some point. Now it's back on there. So if you want content, it's easy for you to make sure you're getting an email every single time we go live or every time we drop an article. Always remember, folks, defense wins championships. Offense wins fantasy football. And we will see you next week when we're talking Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Have a good one.